In this discussion, we'll take a look at strategies and products of saving for retirement. By the end of this lesson, you should be able to discuss numerous retirement saving strategies that you could use to help your client as they save for their retirement. Note that in this lecture, we're going to focus on that savings piece of it. In the subsequent lecture entitled Retirement Income, we'll discuss methods for developing systematic cash flows during that retirement period. When we work with our client in figuring out that savings need, we need to consider a variety of factors, including the sources of income, which will be there during retirement, what those future lifestyle expenses look like, and what is that annual retirement income need? What's the time horizon? How long will our client be working? How long should we expect that retirement period to be? And we need to be conservative on that so that the client doesn't run out of money because they outlive our projection. And we need to think about a number of those assumptions regarding the investing. What is those inflation rates, the inflation rates? But we also need to understand what is the current level of savings, what is the client's risk tolerance, and so we can come up with that systematic saving rate. In Business 591 and 593, you studied different funding methodologies. You particularly looked at level contributions and serial contributions, and then in your retirement course, Business 505, you looked at age banding contributions. And clearly, there could be a combination of these methods. In this presentation, let's review level and serial contributions. And we'll do that with an example. Consider in this case that the client's goal is to have $70,000 in inflation-adjusted dollars per year in the retirement. And you're given the assumption of an inflation rate of 3% and years until retirement of 20. What is the year one in retirement income need? So step one is to inflate $70,000 to that year one of retirement. So using the financial calculator, the number of years is 20. That inflation rate is 3%. The current living need is $70,000. There's a zero payment in solving for the future value. You see that that year one need is $126,428. In this discussion, we'll look at the pure annuity. Simply that every year of retirement, we want it $126,428. In the next example, we'll inflate that by the cost of inflation every year. But in this case, we can just use the calculator, based on the assumption of 18 years of retirement during retirement. The retirement portfolio will grow at 6.8% a year, and assuming that the withdrawals occur at the beginning of the year, again, you can calculate that lump sum with your financial calculator. We'll do that in this case. We'll set the calculator to the begin mode because the assumption is that the entire annual living expense need will be taken out at the beginning of each of those retirement years. There will be 18 years in retirement. The reinvestment rate is 6.8%. At the end of that period, there'll be zero left. So the idea is you're going to consume all of the savings. The payment is $126,428. And solving for the lump sum, we get $1,378,056. And let me stop there for a moment and just talk about lump sum. In reality, retirement is never just one number, and that's because life happens. Assumptions don't play out as they expect. However, I think by calculating a lump sum, it offers us a good starting point in that conversation, and that's why I think it's useful to do that. Solving for the level contributions that will be made in this 20 years up to the retirement date, we're going to input N as 20. That's the number of pre-retirement periods. The reinvestment assumption is 8.5%. assuming zero is saved currently and you need that nest egg of 1,378,056, it would require an annual end of period contribution of 28,486. And notice that in this case, the calculator was set to end mode, again being conservative. Less time for compounding. So the idea is that client makes the contribution but does so at the end of each year. Let's modify that last sample by saying, well, in this case, the client would like to leave a legacy to heirs. And that legacy is going to be $500,000, and that's just going to be flat. It's not going to increase by anything, $500,000. So again, now we solve for the lump sum needed in day one of retirement. We already inflated 70,000 out those 18 periods to get 126,428. We also used a future value of $500,000. That's the legacy. We solved for the PV, and you see that now it's increased from that former lump sum to now $1,531,055. And again, to solve for the contribution, it would be the same process as before, simply using this larger lump sum need. Let's move into a more realistic discussion. In this case, the client still wants that $70,000 today inflated to year one of retirement, but then each year of retirement, the amount of that income needs increases by the rate of inflation for the idea of maintaining purchasing power, right? And so that's what we're seeing here on the diagram. Level contributions up to retirement, and then withdrawals that increase every year by the rate of inflation until that very last year, which is assumed to be the year of passing away, in which the legacy amount comes out. So how do we do this? Well, in this case, let's look at the lump sum needed. And remember before we said the amount given to the heirs, the legacy of $500,000, was not going to inflate by the cost of inflation. So the lump sum needed for $500,000 after 18 years, assuming growth of 6.8%, and you can see I'm solving for that, of $152,999. To that, we're going to add the life income stream over those 18 years. Because that's going to inflate every year, it will start at 126,428, but then inflate. We need to use an inflation-adjusted discount rate. And that is going to be 1 plus the reinvestment rate of 1.068 divided by 1 plus the inflation rate, which is 1.03, minus 1, or that quotient minus 1 times 100 comes up with 3.6893%. In running your calculations on a CFP exam, you always want to go at least 4 decimal places. So solving for that, it's 1,702,244. To that, we add the 152,999. And again, you'll solve for the level contribution knowing what that lump sum is the same way we did before. The problem with the level contribution is that in the beginning years, that contribution can be a burden. Remember, as the client moves through their life cycle and their professional cycle, there'll be earnings. They are expected to be increase in earnings and bonuses. And so one other approach, which you may want to use for clients, is a serial contribution. This, again, is the idea that you're going to systematically contribute every year towards retirement, but the amount of that contribution is going to increase in each of the years, keeping up with some inflation rate, some projected increase in earning rate, that sort of thing. Again, step 1 and 2 is identical. You're going to come up with that lump nest egg. Again, just a target for us to use. But then there's a process of deflating the lump sum at the rate of inflation, and then that becomes the future value, and then calculating the contribution at an inflation rate, and then inflating by that cost of living adjustment. Now that sounds very complicated, right? And it's not quite that intuitive, so let's walk through the process. You've calculated the lump sum. And in this case, I am saying, you have to excuse, not 1 million, it's 1,378,056. 20 years pre-retirement, the inflation rate is 3, so you're going to discount that back to year 0, and that comes up with 762,996. So that's deflating the lump sum. We then calculate the payment that is needed based on the inflation-adjusted reinvestment rate. So we move the 562,996 as that future lump sum, so that becomes the FV. In this case, there's 0 savings, 20 years until retirement, and now we've got 1.085, that's an 8.5% reinvestment rate, right? Divided by 1 plus the inflation rate, 1.03. That gives us, in this case, a discount rate of 5.3398. Solving for the payment, we come up with 22,258. Now, 22,258 is at time 0. But if the investment is made at the end of the year, like we're assuming, we need to inflate that by 3%. So at the end of this current year, the contribution needs to be 22,926. At the end of the second year, it would have to be inflated by another 3%, or multiplying by 103%, and you're getting 23,614. And you'll be doing that in each of the years, all the way out to year 20. So you can see the idea is that as our clients move through the life cycle, their annual contributions increase with the serial approach. Again, another tool that, another strategy you can put on your tool belt. In your retirement class, you took a look at age banding methodology. The premise of age banding methodology is, rather than solving for one lump sum, in which we look at income need over the entire period, we're looking at different bands. And we're saying that, well, these are the income needs in those first 10 years, and here's our income needs in the second 10 years, and the third 10 years. And the idea is that you are targeting your investment for those different bands. So now the time horizon, in our example was 20 years until retirement, well, that would be for the first band. There'd actually be 30 years reinvestment for the second band and 40 years to the third band. That has real implications on our asset allocation, our client's risk tolerance, and that can have greater impact on earnings over time and how much we need to invest now if we're assuming greater growth when we can take on greater risk because of longer time horizons. I encourage you to go back and review that article. We'll mention this in the subsequent discussion on retirement income strategy, but I think it's well worth taking a look at that. What are some of the retirement vehicles that you'll be investing in over this pre-retirement period? Well, we certainly have traditional IRAs and Roth IRAs, qualified plans, and corporate IRA type plans, SEPs and Simples. Depending on where your client works, they might be in a 403B, 457 plans. In some cases, your clients who are key employees might be part of a non-qualified plan. And of course, annuities have taken center stage in the last few years. The idea that we can put in, after maxing out those IRAs and those defined contribution plans that are available to us, purchasing annuities and taxable investment accounts. So all of these different vehicles are there to help us satisfy the savings need. Now, unfortunately, in working with some of your clients, you're going to run into retirement shortfalls, particularly those clients that have a short window until they start retirement. And because of that, you'll have to take a look at some strategies for dealing with shortfalls. The first one involves some difficult conversations. You just sit down and talk to your clients about perhaps reassessing their retirement lifestyle goals, looking at how they might cut down some of their expenditures, particularly discretionary. What can be done to the current budget to allow more money to be put into the savings, knowing that we're looking at a shortfall? The idea that maybe downsizing of the home once retirement starts, or if the client's already in there and wants to stay in the home, the idea of maybe taking out a reverse mortgage. Given the client's situation, their need, their risk tolerance, and where they are in terms of within the retirement picture, can we reposition some of the investment assets for greater potential growth? And one of the strategies might be to employ an age banding methodology. If the shortfall is really severe, then you might have to delay retirement and have that conversation. Or in retirement, maybe picking up a new part-time career, a part-time hobby job, some way on the side to generate some more cash flows. Other considerations you'll have to think about in working with your client is to coordinate the three types of retirement accounts: the individual, the employer, the Social Security. Always take advantage of the employer matching. They're golden dollars. You don't want to leave those on the table. You have to do what you do within your budget to make sure you get those free dollars. You might consider diversifying the tax status of the accounts. Not knowing the way that tax rates will move in the future, look at putting some money in tax-deferred accounts, some tax-free, the tax-free Roth, or maybe taxable accounts now. And also think about where you put the different types of securities in your savings accounts, into the taxable accounts versus the tax-deferred accounts. In this presentation, really focused on the savings part of it, with particular emphasis on level contributions, serial contributions, contributions that will maintain purchasing power through retirement, or simply level. In the next one, we'll take a look at retirement income strategies, and I think you'll find that quite fascinating.